not washing
Yeah.
our hair for 5 days is already so gross. It's really disgusting. If you really base on old logic, it really doesn't make sense
Mm-hmm.
anymore to abide, word for word, letter to
Mm-hmm.
letter, traditional method.
The blessing, I would say, is that because we get to take care of the kids out on our own, we decided to do it on our own. That's why we have, I think, a lot of say in terms of how we want to do the confinement.
To 100% follow traditional value does not make sense. To disregard the fundamentals of state values does not make sense as well. Do what is comfortable for you and your spouse.
It's a very opportunity because we should keep it as smooth, right? People always actually to have that kind of bond, but ultimately, we should be very hands-on of the environment.
Okay. So, welcome back. This is our third episode of the Two Dads podcast where we talk about all things dad. I think this is the
Yeah.
very first time we are doing a podcast via Zoom. So,
Yes.
it's not in person, right? Reason being, I'm already expecting my daughter to be born anytime this week or the next week. So, yeah, best to be near my wife.
Yeah, and I think it's also what a better way to actually have today's topic at home because I think today's topic is all about confinement, right? So
Yes.
it's I think it's very timely, to really film this podcast at the comfort of our home.
Right, and because confinement is something that you do at home and can't really leave your house, right? So I think yeah, it's very appropriate that we have this podcast exactly at home. And I think
Yes.
for our viewers and listeners out there who don't really know what confinement is, right? So we can just do a very simple explanation. So what we are referring to is actually postpartum confinement. It's a traditional practice following childbirth where typically the wife, mummies, they are secluded or rather kept at home under, during the recovery period for them
Mhm.
to recuperate and recover from their childbirth. So, and it typically lasts between 20 to 30 days. Some stretch it to 100, but on the average, it's about 30 days.
Mhm.
Yeah. So I guess today's episode we'll be talking about that, preparing for such a period. And for you, Aloysius, would be to share your experience in that period.
Yeah. So definitely more than glad to share. I mean, there isn't much experience, just two confinements that I went through with my wife. And I'm not the one suffering, my wife is the one suffering in that whole two confinement period. And I think my role is really just see what I can help and what I can support during that whole period. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah, and I can only imagine what going through two confinements would be like, right? I'm preparing for my first ones and really not knowing what to expect. So it would be
Mm.
very interesting to hear from you what you went through.
Yeah.
So yeah, how should we do this? How should we start?
Yeah, maybe I share a little bit, on the very first time I went through the cold confinement with my wife. I think the first time we were actually looking out for confinement nanny because first time, there isn't really much support and help. And we were also trying to read books. So I think a couple of what last episode or even the episode before I talk about this book, Secrets of Baby Whisperer. So that is the whole book I have been reading, and I think that has been useful during the whole preparation towards that whole confinement period. So we were looking around for confinement nanny because we were anxious. We don't know how it's going to be like. And coincidentally, in 2020, the Chinese Lunar New Year falls in January. And my firstborn, he is due to be delivered in January as well. So when we were looking for a lot of confinement agencies, I mean, we went to a lot of blogs online based on recommendations, Facebook groups. So we saw a couple of good nannies out there, and we thought, hey, let's give it a try. So we shortlisted five, and we thought, it should be sufficient, right? Five nannies. And then when we start to reach out to all of the agencies to ask of the availability, really sad because most of them were actually not local. They're actually, either Malaysian or Indonesian, and during that period, they actually have already made plans to return back to their hometown to celebrate the Lunar New Year with their loved ones. So it was pretty sad, and we thought, now it's fine. Let's look for more confinement nannies. And as we search more information online, we found that the good ones are either taken or they are going back to their hometown. And then they have actually a lot of nannies left. But then when we go online to search, sometimes they are based on numbers, right? They give like certain number like 008 or 015. Can inquire and ask. So when you start to see a lot of the chat groups or even the Facebook group, they start to say that, hey, this nanny actually is not, they experience certain negative experience with this nanny. And they sort of struck us that, hey, I don't feel safe, engaging this nanny. And then my mom is working, and I think we also consider asking help from in-laws. But then when I started to read the book, Baby of the Secret Whisperer, I started to gain confidence. And then I was looking on YouTube videos how to shower an infant baby. And watching that whole video, I thought that, hey, seems really easy, right? It's small little baby just in the shower, wash the umbilical cord area. And I thought, so I proposed this very interesting thing to my wife. I say, let's do it ourselves. We can't find a confinement nanny. I mean, that's fine. I will be the confinement daddy. And well, it just happened. So I was the one facilitating and helping my wife to take care of the infant during the 4 month of confinement, where she really just rest and try to recover, because during the first delivery, she experienced massive pelvic pain. So first day, pain, second day pain, third day discharge, we went home. She couldn't walk. So to the point that I need to rush back to the office to borrow a computer chair from the office, because she can sit on a computer chair. I can wheel her around the whole house, right? So there's the convenience. And yeah, that's how it happens for the confinement, how it starts with the search of a nanny and end up becoming just myself and my wife. And of course, my mother-in-law that do come by and help a little bit during the daytime, especially sometimes when we need some rest or when we are doing work from home. Because during my time, paternity leave is just 2 weeks, right? And now government gave that 4 weeks paternity, 2 weeks is mandatory still. Another 2 weeks is whether employers would like to use it, and then they can still be under paid leave from government subsidized. So yeah, after 2 weeks, I requested 2 weeks work from home, and I think that came in very handy to have my mother-in-law coming to help feed my baby, helping to change the Bible while I was working, and having online meets like this kind of situation. And once in a while, my kid will just pop out in the online meet because I have no choice. I need to feed him. I need to take care of. Yeah, so I think that book really helped me a lot. But it doesn't mean that if you read the book, you will know how to take care of kids, because I think every kid is different. You need to see how you can go about to feed the needs of the baby, feed the needs of the situation and the circumstances. Yeah, so yeah, that's pretty much how we do it. And I think we can deep dive even more later on, like what other stuff we did during confinement. Yeah,
Yes,
so
definitely.
that's a pretty interesting stuff.
Yes, so you mentioned that you thought it was easy to
Mhm.
be a confinement, I guess, daddy in your case, right? So you did a lot of reading and did a lot of research, and then you actually carried it out. So was there a difference between expectations and reality, in your case?
Um, I think the book itself, if you read the book talks a lot of things about the routine. So I think in Asian context, it's advisable if you have an Asian parent or Asian grandparent, they always say, not to shower the infant at night because they may catch the wind. So I think in Chinese term, wind is something that they may affect their body when they grow up. They may face like aches here and there. So that is that kind of advice, older generations would tend to give to say, no, don't shower the baby at night. They're gonna catch a cold. So when I read the book, the book advises, right, to shower the infant at night because it's creating a routine to let them feel comfortable. After you shower them, you change them to pajamas. That's when they will start to get that routine to say, hey, once I've showered, once I put on my pajamas, it means that it's going to be a long night of sleep. So I think that makes sense. So that's why I decided to choose to follow that and disregard that Asian belief, because I think in Singapore, you and I know that, it's hot. It's
Yeah,
hot. There is
incredibly
literally
hot.
no cold season. The only cold season you get is probably during rainy season, and the temperature probably goes to about 28, 24 degrees. That's like aircon temperature, right? Yeah, so I decided to just get buy-ins from my parents, from my in-laws, to say that I am going to shower my kid.
Was it
Uh,
easy? Was it easy to get their buy-in?
I think that is something that when they start to see that it actually works for the baby, then they will say, oh, yeah, I mean, on and off, they will say advice to say, try not to. But I say that, I am the one taking care. Let me try my method, because I want to create that routine, because I am ultimately the one who will be the most hands-on taking care of the baby, helping to do night feeds, changing the diaper. I want to get to know his character, and his habit, his routine as well. So I decided to convince them, just by showing them that, it works. Yeah. So that's why when our second child came, we did the same. And of course, it didn't work for the second child, because the second one, I think character is very different. Everything is different. Like I say, it's challenging, because what works for the first doesn't mean it works for the second. You need to tweak a little bit of the whole formula, the whole routine to suit that child itself. Yeah. So that's I think the challenge that we face during the confinement.
Mm.
Um, I think hands-on part that is really very fun, because when you start to see certain things works, you're like, hey, it's pretty easy. You tend to be more confident. But of course, child will go through development phase during their first few months, and then you start to think my formula doesn't work. I think it's really pushing through. It's like working out, right? You are doing workouts. You know that you would result in 1 day, 2 day. Some days you will feel exhausted because you have
Yeah.
a long night of work. Like this week itself, we took a 3 days break from workout, and it's not about that you think that that's it, I'm not going to work out anymore. I think it's that persistence to continue pushing on, and then you eventually know that that period will just go off, and then you will revert back to the norm. That's when you know that your routine and is still working. That is
Mm.
something that is a good formula.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So it sounds like you took a more hybrid approach towards confinement, where I still
Yeah.
see a lot of families, taking the traditional approach, right? So, yeah, what was it like? Because I'm pretty sure a lot of our listeners and a lot of families out there, they are still under the tradition, or in the mindset that they need to follow
Mm.
tradition, and they need to do confinement as how people have done it for years and years past, right?
Yeah.
Before. So what made you adopt this hybrid approach? Because I have not been through confinement, right?
Mm.
I still want to explore how to do confinement well. As a new parent,
Yeah.
we don't know what works or what will not work, and traditional confinement methods have been proven time and time again, right? So definitely taking a hybrid approach is not easy. What made you decide to do it?
Um, I think what ultimately makes me want to do it is because, firstly, if you choose a confinement nanny, right, you can't really tell confinement nanny you should do this, you should try this kind of confinement method, because the confinement nanny will come to you and say, "Hey, I have 20 years of experience at my back. Why should you teach me when you have no experience being a parent or taking care of infant? Where I have 20 years, right, taking care of thousands of infants." So that's the challenge, right? Then secondly, if you get parents to help out, you normally you wouldn't want to argue and try to change how your parent will help take care, because they will say that I'm the one that raised you. It works back then. Why are you trying to correct me? So the blessing I would say is that because we get to take care of the kids out on our own, we decided to on our own. That's why we have, I think, a lot of say in terms of how we want to do the confinement. Of course, there's still some stuff we try to follow the practices of the tradition, like herbal baths, the wife not showering. I should not disclose if my wife wash her hair during the confinement period, but that's the tradition, right? They will advise, the ladies, during confinement, do not wash your hair. You can do the bath and the body, using the herbal bath that typically they will buy in the boxes, from the Chinese physician stores that you can find. Uh, but I think not washing hair is going to be challenging. You have been in the army, you have been outfield, for 5 days without showering. The itch
It's
in the hair
disgusting.
is
Terrible.
challenging. Yeah, so I think, that will be a challenge that if I will face the situation, I'll probably start to wash my hair the second day or third day because that itch I could not. Yeah. Um, I think aside to that is, the feeds and everything. I get to choose how we do it. Uh, Making sure that that is the method I want to feed my child. Like for example, we decided that we want to do bottle feeding. My wife expressed through pumping out the milk from her breast. We will, put it in the fridge, and once my kid is hungry, wake up from cries, then I'll pour and I'll heat up the milk because I can see how much milk I'm feeding the kids. I think that's very important because when you are directly latching, the challenge is that you don't know whether are they drinking sufficient, how much are they drinking. Um, yeah, and of course, some people believe on latching is that I don't say that's wrong. I mean, there's different people have different methods and practices. Each have their own ways and each of their own pros. I think for this case is that I can relieve the duty from my wife so that every time the kid cries, she won't feel stress and pressure that, oh, it's time to feed again. The kid need me again. So it doesn't happen to that because when we are doing bottle feed, when my mother-in-law come by, she can assist while I'm working.
Mm.
I can be in the room resting. That's the good thing. And if let's say after 2 weeks of paternity leave, I go back to the office to work, my wife still can feed the child because he's getting used to feeding through bottle. Yeah, so that is really something we decided to,
Mm.
believe that that is the right to want from day one. And I think it has worked out for us. Even till today, they're still drinking waters. And that's fine. They look for mommy because they know that, well, I need to drink for the bottle. Yeah.
Yeah. And since you're talking about feeding, right? Hopefully you didn't forget to feed your wife, right? So what
Oh,
about what
yes.
about the your wife's food?
So confinement meals, I think, if you have confinement nanny will definitely be the one helping you to cook. You will just need to go to the grocery to buy. They would typically give you a set of these, these are the ingredients I need. There's this very special, vinegar that they need require as well. Some people go over to across the border to Malaysia, Johor, to purchase some of these very nice vinegar to cook. And they typically will cook like pig trotters, um, more of the kind of, Asian Chinese food to help to give nutrients to the mom so that they can firstly, recover. And secondly, I think also help in the supply of the breast milk. Yeah. So, because we didn't choose confinement nanny and, we don't have someone to cook for us, we decided, hey, let's go for confinement meals. And I think nowadays it's very common, to have a lot of, vendors supplying confinement meals. We chose one that, is quite popular. It's doing Asian food. We chose them for the first one. I would say the food itself is, good. I've been to their store eating their food. It was amazing. But because it's the same set of dish that comes by every week, right? By the time you have first week of food, you tend to get tired and sick of
Yeah.
the meal. So that's why, during our second, child, confinement, my wife decided to change her vendor. They gave some fusion kind of meals. So every day is a different kind of fresh meal. Sometimes you get like, salmon. Sometimes you get, Chinese food. I think that's
Mm.
pretty okay. And get Western food. So it comes different. And of course, every meal will accompany with a red tea. And I think those are a typical confinement drink that, mommies would want to drink. So of course, that's how she get fed during that whole, confinement period. But I don't think she get confinement meal for the whole, 1 month. I think she probably
Mm.
got it for 2 weeks or 3 weeks. And,
Mm.
she's typically a small eater, so whatever left over, yeah, I get to eat, free food during the period. But guys couldn't eat that much because these food are categorized as heaty food. So if you eat it, every day, you're gonna face that, as Chinese, you will realize that, you start to get a lot of heat in your body. Yeah, so once in a while I'll eat like few mouthful, and then I'll have my own meals that I typically, buy from outside, or I'll cook it myself. Yeah, so that's how my wife get, the nutrients that is required. And I think these meals, right, are being uh, made into precise by, they probably have a nutritionist to look into all the nutrients in different meals to make sure that there is sufficient nutrients in each meal to help the mummy do their recovery during this whole confinement. So I think these are good choices to choose to look at, because nutritionists have looked into these meals, and we know that it is well cooked, because I have tasted, tasty delicious. Yeah.
Mm,
So talking about confinement meals, are you planning to get one for your wife soon? Because
mm.
the day is coming. It may be any time from now, right? Who
Yeah,
knows? During
anytime we
during this podcast, you may need to leave halfway if anything happens. But let's
hopefully not. Yeah. So we got two actually. So but it's not two in for just 1 month. We got two vendors over the spreading over 2 months, right?
okay, two
So yeah,
months.
yep. So first month, we went with one vendor. I believe it was Tianwei. Or second one was Chili Padi. So these are the two vendors. Which we decide for the first month. We haven't really settled yet. We can switch it around. Yep. But these were the two that we went for. And
Mhm.
the reason we went for this is because during the confinement, we did not engage any external help other than the food vendors, right?
Mm,
So it's all in-house, kind of like your
ah,
situation.
okay.
So we get help from my in-laws, get help from my parents, of course myself will be there. And that's how we plan to do the confinement.
Mm,
So at least the food is settled. Is one thing that we do not have to think about, because it's the most frequent thing you will be thinking about, right? Food is a daily thing. So at least that's settled. We can focus 100% of our time on the baby and taking care of the baby, as well as, of course, my wife and her recovery. Yeah. So yeah, we went with two vendors.
nice. So is that done through, I think you shared last episode you went to the baby fair.
Mm.
Is that, engaged through the baby fair itself?
Yes. So good question. We did actually engage them through baby fairs. Uh, the first one we engaged in the mother care fair, and the second one we engaged in the mummy's market fair.
Mm-hmm.
So they do give better deals at fairs. So
Okay.
I think it's pretty good if we for our listeners out there to engage them during the fairs lah. They do give
Mm.
like 5% more discount,
Oh,
more goodie bags, thermal flasks, what have you, vouchers for other purchases, so on and so forth. So that's the reason why we went there and engaged these vendors. You get to try the food there as well. So you actually
oh,
taste the food and know what will actually be served to you on the day itself. So I think that's we were sold then and there.
but when you get for a cross of 2 months, is it like the
Hmm,
first vendor for the first month, or
yep,
second vendor? Okay, so
yeah,
they will supply uh that 1 month period for 2 meals each day,
yes. So of course the biggest thing I'm worried about would be whether my wife get bored of the food, right? Because yeah,
right?
like you said, uh it's like the same thing over and over again. They
Yeah.
serve this red date tea
Yeah.
or soup, right? And all the food would be, like you said, classified as heaty. They add a
Mm-hmm.
lot of vinegar, a lot of ginger.
Yeah.
Yeah, these are traditionally known to help in the recovery after childbirth, lah.
Yeah.
So I'm not sure how much variation can there be. So yeah, looking forward to that experience to see how it
Well,
goes.
that's. Are you gonna try some for your own as well during that whole period?
I'm pretty sure after the first few days when my wife gets bored of the food, I will be the one eating it.
Don't try
Yeah.
to tempt her eating good food in front of her during that 2 months.
We'll see how. So yes. I mentioned we actually plan to do
Mm.
everything in-house.
Okay.
And if you ask me whether we are adopting the more traditional approach, I would say no.
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like you, adopting a more hybrid approach,
Mm.
basically doing what makes sense, right? So of course we respect traditions, we respect where they came from and the reasons behind it. So after
Mm.
doing some digging, right, I found out traditional confinement methods, they are usually for the period of time where mortality rates were higher during childbirth.
Mm.
So they have all these practices in place, to protect the mom, protect the child,
Yeah.
stay at
Yeah.
home, it's safe at home, right? It's warm at home.
Definitely.
Yeah, food is provided at home. So that was the reason why. And medical advances have been so great these few centuries, right? Few decades. Yeah, if you really base on old logic, it really doesn't make sense
Mm-hmm.
anymore to abide, word for word, letter to
Mm-hmm.
letter, traditional methods. So we are adopting a more hybrid approach. Not bathing for 1 month, right? I think that one does not make sense.
Yeah, I mean,
Uh,
the mom still can bathe, just not washing the hair, right? I think that's that whole tradition of the confinement.
yes. So but if you really think about it, not washing your hair for a month, I will volunteer to sleep on the couch,
I
right?
probably shave my head, man.
Yeah, we've been through the national service, right? We've been through army. Not washing our
Yes.
hair for 5 days is already so gross. Can you
Even though our
imagine
hair
one
was
month?
like so thin back there, so short, right?
Yeah, and it's really disgusting, like in my opinion. And plus, Singapore's weather is humid.
Yeah,
Even if you
yeah.
stay in air-conditioned environment for the entire day, it builds up, right? The dirt, the grease, the
Yes.
grime. So we feel that if you let all this dirt build up, it's not good for the baby as well, especially if you don't bathe, right?
Mm-hmm.
The bodily fluid, sweat, it's salty and all this kind of thing. It's
Yeah.
harder for the baby to feed.
Mm.
We feel so. Yeah, we probably would do away with that.
Have you
That part of.
considered confinement nanny for yourself?
We didn't. So actually, what you mentioned just now was quite interesting to me when you said you didn't feel safe or something like this, right?
Yeah.
So, we had the same feeling, right? Not that confinement nannies are not to be trusted. There are very good ones out there. We just don't feel comfortable leaving our baby in the hands of someone else,
Mm-hmm.
especially if we are not around. I think, yeah, the peace of mind is not there. So
Yes.
that's the biggest reason why we didn't engage any confinement nannies.
Mm.
I think if we need help, baby's grandparents are more than willing to step in if we cannot manage or if we are not around. Especially for guys, right? We have to go back to work after 1 month.
Mm.
I think during that period of time, getting parents buy-in, in-laws buy-in, to help schedule out everything, help each other. I
Mm.
think that's very important. So yeah, biggest reason would be the peace of mind is not there lah, when we engage confinement nannies.
Yeah. How about confinement centers? Have you heard about confinement centers? I think these are getting very, very popular in these days. I have friends that actually go to confinement center, and um I think during my time back then it was probably not very common. But
Mm-hmm.
when I start to hear about it, I went to do a research. It's like a hotel with all that necessary services provided all in one. So what I heard is they have that postnatal massage. They have a nursery with nurses helping to take care of babies at night. It's a hotel where your wife can stay with you, there. They have a kitchen to cook confinement meals for you. Oh my gosh.
Talk about
Just
the dream
imagine.
confinement.
But then talk about the costing, last episode, budgeting, we talk about a lot of things, right? So I did a quick search on the budget for this. It cost almost 20,000 Singapore dollars for 28 days of service in the confinement center. Oh my gosh.
And there you go. That's my reason for not going for a confinement center. I heard of
I
that
mean,
too.
if you could afford it, would you mind trying for like maybe a week, 2 weeks just to see how it goes? Because
Of course, I mean, if
everything
I
is
can
free,
afford
right?
it, that's the caveat. If I can afford it,
Ah,
yeah. Unfortunately, I cannot. So I did have a conversation with my in-laws, I think a couple of days back, right? And they mentioned that Shangri-La Hotel does a
okay.
confinement. Yeah, a hotel, a
Oh,
five-star hotel doing confinement packages.
I wonder
Uh,
what's the cost gonna be like doing
yeah,
confinement in Shangri-La.
I can only imagine. But no, that was totally out of the question. I have friends, or rather, my wife has friends who I think went for these confinement packages. Mainly because companies they have benefits that allow them to
Yeah,
go for such
yes.
centers. Yeah, then by all means, right? But
You,
yeah,
you
for I
need to
think for
tell
the
me
both of us,
which company are these providing such services because oh, it's pretty amazing, 10 to 20 grand, and the
yeah,
company is willing to subsidize for this coverage. Not saying that I'm gonna have a third kid, but I'm just curious, because if they can give this kind of comprehensive paternity maternity benefits, it probably meant that there are there are great companies, I assume.
yeah, I'm not sure what companies they are, but wow, I wish I wish I had it too. So yeah, confinement centers we never really realistically considered it. Maybe second child, I will strike the lottery. We'll see how.
That's everyone's dream, striking the lottery with just $1. So,
Yeah.
talking about, it's just few days coming and you are already well prepared for confinement, but are you actually prepared, for the sleepless night that is to come? Because that's part of the whole confinement process, right? That you will need to, uh, because the baby will not know, when is day, when is night. They just came to this world and they are clueless. And that's when it's going to screw up your entire routine that whole period.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the most talked about topic. Being sleepless when the baby is born. Both
Mm-hmm.
of us, me and my wife, we are fully expecting to not have sleep or not have sufficient sleep. But what it feels like in reality, we have no idea what to expect. Right? We have no idea what the fatigue will do to us. We have no idea how or when the baby, how often the baby will cry. They mostly cry because they're hungry, right? Or you need to change their diapers.
Yes.
These are the very basic reasons, the simple reasons. Yeah, but we are not sure the frequency of it happening and how
Mm.
much of a toll it would have on us. Uh, you have that experience. Maybe you can share a bit with me. What is it like?
Uh, so I talked about the book that I read from Tracy Hawk, right? So I mean, I'm not promoting this book, or I'm not doing any sponsor. I'm not getting any sponsors from them, but I hold very deeply onto this book is because it really helped me in that whole journey. We didn't really religiously follow per se because, like what I mentioned, it's really tricky, really basing on what suits your need. Because so the whole routine in the book is called Easy Routine. If you do a quick search online, Easy Routine for baby, there is that whole guidance on week 1 to 4, week 5 to 8, and onwards. How that whole routine will change. So for us, we decided to adopt this routine because we look at this routine. It's like, hey, there is sufficient rest for ourselves. Easy, so easy is actually an acronym. E stands for eat, so baby needs to eat when they wakes. A is the activity portion, doing the activity with the kid. S is when the baby start to sleep, and then you get the Y, which is your time, and the U can be a lot of things that you can do during the period. And the window typically is about 45 minutes, can be shorter, can be longer, depending on kids. Like what I say, every kid is different, right? Some kid can last 45 minutes of nap time, some couldn't, 15 minutes and they'll be awake. So I think the why is very important because that's when your wife can get some rest or they can eat their confinement meal.
And if they happen to get postnatal massage, that is also the time for them to rest, to get a massage. And for our case as dads, right, as husband, it's really, running the errands. Who knows, you need more diapers, then you need to rush to the supermarket. Of course, nowadays there are delivery, right? Pajamas, you can just order online. And if let's say you're on urgent, the mummy's milk supply is low, you need to rush to buy formula milk. So this is why it's very good, because you can do all this thing while also same time washing your laundries, eating, or even sleeping, taking that small little nap on your own so that you can uh, gain back the sleep that you lost in the night through the day in these small little windows. Then I think that will help eventually in making sure that you yourself are being taken care of in terms of your own health, your own mental well-being. So then you are ready again to take care of the baby during the night if things get screwed up in the routine. Yeah, so that's what I have practiced. It works very well for our first one. Just that the challenge is he's not eating well. Sometimes I think for infant for start they probably drink like 60 ml. He would just drink 20 ml of milk and then he just falls asleep. And it just scrubbed the whole easy routine, because easy routine is supposed to be eat activity.
Yeah.
He didn't eat finish, he skipped his activity and he went straight to sleep. It's like, oh my gosh, right? And that's why I say, you need to tweak your whole routine, your whole formula, and not say that, if he doesn't follow, we need to make sure that he wakes up and drink and then follow through. I think that doesn't work that way. We based on the situation, we apply what makes sense, like what you say. If it makes sense on that particular circumstances and situation, let's apply it for a new method and then see how it goes. So that's what we did, right? We try to iterate and come up with different variations of how to go with the routine. But ultimately, the whole framework is still focusing on the easy routine, because you look at the whole process, it's like easy, 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 because you start the day 7 a.m., easy routine for about 3 hours, then another 3 hours. So every easy routine is 3 hours of slots. Until the night time, you try to push for a longer sleep period. So that's when you, as a father, as a husband, and your wife can get longer sleep time during the night. Yeah. It will eventually happen if you push through and sustain. It's just like working out, right? You want to see the gains. It's not one day, it's not 1 week, it's not 1 month. Sometimes take 3 months, 4 months to see that kind of gains happening.
Yeah.
Same thing for the baby. You need to push through that whole routine, believing that it will work, and eventually you see the results happening. Yeah.
So when you mention sleep time, how much sleep time did it actually increase? 45
so
minutes to
I think the day nap time sometimes varies 30 minutes, 45 minutes during each 3 hour slots. And it gives us really sufficient time to do a lot of things during that 45 minutes or 30 minutes window. So it's only the night one that you're praying hard and hoping that they can sleep through, right? But I mean, to be frank, not a lot of infants can sleep through the night at the start. And typically it takes them months to learn to sleep through, because you start to create that routine, like what I mentioned earlier, right? Letting know that after you shower, you change the pajamas, it's meant that it's going to be different, because during the day, you're not showering that. They're probably wearing some comfortable clothes. And, the AC is probably not turned on. You're probably just sleeping with fan. So it creates that routine to tell them that now it's not sleeping time. Don't sleep too long. Take a short little nap, and then when it's time to wake up, you wake up. But nighttime, we are putting you in the best comfortable setting and environment as much as possible, because we'll off the lights, we'll turn on the AC, we'll shower them, put them in pajamas so that it feels comfortable, to let them know this is what is nighttime. This is your sleep time. So take a longer sleep as much as possible. Of course, they do actually take longer sleep, because from what I recall, I noticed the first few days, right? He probably at night he sleep 1 or 2 hours before he wakes. And that's already a good progress, because you look at the daytime, right, it's about 45 minutes to an hour window, but nighttime it stretches longer. And that's when you know that somehow or other it works, right? So you try to push and push and push, and you see eventually these 1 or 2 hours become 3 hours, 4 hours, and voila, they sleep through the night. Yeah. So you look at my two kids right now, I'm doing forecast, they are both well asleep. One of them sleep at 7:30, one sleep at about 8 to 8:30. and they wake up the next day at 6:30 to 7 a.m. and they're sleeping through the night. They wouldn't wake
Mm.
up during the midnight. Yeah. So that is how I see
Okay.
the gains. Yeah, the gains took 2 years or 3 years to happen because I sort of
Interesting.
say that that's what we believe in.
So it starts during confinement.
Yes, start from day one. So I think day one is a challenge because you're probably tired. Your wife,
Yes.
just deliver and she need the rest. So in the hospital, what we did is we are not prepared to be hands-on yet. So we get the nurses to facilitate a lot of night feeds so that for myself I can sleep, get as much sleep as I can, so
Yeah.
that when we are back home, that's when I put on my full gear armor and say, okay,
Mm.
come on, let's do it now.
Yeah, so I think we pretty much covered all there is to cover for confinement. We
Yeah,
covered food, right? We covered traditional confinement methods versus what works or what doesn't today. Uh yeah, I think I'm a bit more prepared now.
that's great because anytime it could happen. And yeah, I
Yeah,
really hope that it will be a smooth whole delivery process for your wife and you can get as much rest as you can during this period.
I hope so too.
Um, yeah, so CK, you have been preparing for this day,
Mm,
right? And any advice that you can give to our listeners out there who are probably, either at the same stage as you or they're actually, preparing to get their wife or they are themselves expecting a kid in a couple of months' time. How can
yeah.
they actually prepare themselves for this whole
Mm.
period? So we share some advice.
So I would advise dads out there to do their own research and do what feels right and do what makes sense. So in my case, me and wife, we discussed, I think quite extensively what confinement is going to be like for us. To 100% follow traditional values does not make sense. To disregard the fundamentals of state values does not make sense as well, which is why the hybrid approach made the most sense to us. So do what is comfortable for you and your spouse. That's the most important. There will be external pressures telling you you must do this, you must do that. But at the end of the day, the people taking care of the baby should make that decision because they are the
Yeah,
ones at the end of the day will be the one either feeling comfortable, either recovering, or either suffering. Yeah, at the end of the day,
yeah.
these are the ones taking care of the baby should decide for themselves. Yeah. What about
Well,
you?
uh, I think my the advice that I would like to give listeners out there, if you're a fellow dad, is really explore to be hands-on. I think because this whole process is very rare. Unless you're gonna say that I'm gonna have like 4 or 5 kids, right? Then you think that it will be a repeated cycle or over the next few confinement. But it's a rare opportunity because each kid is unique, right? You don't want to miss the opportunity to have that kind of bond at the start, to be present, to be there. And especially during this period, the wife will need, the most support ever in terms of emotional, physical, because that's when you see statistically, right, a lot of mommies get postpartum depression because I think they feel stressed. There's so many things ongoing. Recovery, I just deliver. My baby needs me. My baby needs to drink his milk. There's no one to help. And then it became a part that, it's so challenging for them. And thankfully, my wife doesn't go through that whole postpartum depression. But um, the second child that came for us, he was so different. And sometimes we don't even know what he wants during that whole first month of confinement. And it stresses her out, you know. And I think, I was there to support. It really probably helps a little to take care of that needs that the baby is crying. Try to, get my wife to rest as much so that I can take care of the baby. I think that would be my advice to all dads out there to learn to be hands-on. And of course, if you are getting support, right, it can be helpers. Some people get domestic helpers to come and facilitate. Uh, don't get them to be very hands-on with kids. I think they can assist in the household chore because that will probably be the part that you will start to, not put in as much focus and time and effort in that area because you are so busy doing the caring needs for the baby. Your wife is busy recovering, and then you will realize that the household chores start to pile up. So if you have domestic helper, right, it's really getting them to help in that aspect, but not the caring of the kid, because I think ultimately we should be very hands-on. Of course, like what you say, parents can come by and facilitate. Pressures can come. So what I did is really sometimes I will just try to shut my ears, close my eyes, I close both eyes. But ultimately, when it's back to me again, that's like, all right, I gotta do it on my own. Yeah. So I really believe that being a hands-on dad, I mean, this era is so different from the olden days where moms is just the one staying at home taking care, and then there are the whole kampong village of families coming to support, and then dads will still continue to go out and work, right? I mean, this era is so different. There's a lot of advocates for family benefits in workplace. So if you are that, right, just try as much as possible to make full use of this benefit. Be around, be present. I think this is very important to support the emotional needs of your baby, your wife. That's very important. Yeah.
Yeah, awesome. Great advice. So, to all our viewers and listeners out there, thank you so much for listening. If you find this content helpful, do leave a like and subscribe. That will let us know that you actually like the content. That will motivate us to make more such podcast.
Yeah.
Yep.
So if anyone have any questions, or even if you would like to hear certain topics, just feel free to drop in comments below. Let us know what you would like to hear, or if you want to find a little bit more about the confinement meals that CK has purchased for the 2 months, feel free to ask these questions. I think we are more than happy to drop some links to share with you, and even the books that I shared about, right? I mean, it's easily available online, but if you need more insights, I will drop the comments below, and we'll be more than glad to share our things that we have researched on.
Yep. That's all. See you next
Right.
episode. Bye.
Bye.